I'm me again. It feels like it's been years.
Today I wanted to talk about rediscovering old passions, old interests, because I recently rediscovered an old passion of almost 10-year-old passion of mine, and it's changed my life for the better. And it really got me thinking, and it's something I want to explore and talk about with you because I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to, but also maybe a lot of people haven't had the joy of experiencing and might prompt them to re-explore some things that they used to love and could really change some people's lives for the better. I think there's no genuine way of talking about this without giving my personal experience, my personal story, and kind of explaining what these passions and interests are, just to give you a more genuine approach of this conversation. So I'm in my mid-20s now, and about 10 years ago now, I had discovered the band 21 Pilots, and like a lot of teens in 2015, 2016, 2017, I was a huge 21 Pilots fan. It was something I really needed at that time in my life. I connected to the music, to the band, and it was ultimately a special interest, a passion, my favorite band. And I continued to love them and listen to them for years and saw them in concert a few times. I think maybe 5 years later, when I kind of went off to college around that age, I started to take interest in other things. Other things took the forefront, which I think took up the space that my passion for this band had been taking up previously. And so that passion had kind of dwindled down, and I still really appreciated them, but it wasn't something that I wouldn't call it probably a passion anymore for a few years. And then in 2024, 21 Pilots put out a new album, and it literally changed everything. I don't know why it gets me so emotional talking about it. It's something I'm going to try and dissect later in this video, but in 2024, so maybe about 4 or 5 years after kind of losing interest, they put out an album, and from that point on, so we're 2025 now, from early 2024 till now, I've been obsessed, essentially. I would say it's a passion, not just an interest, not just my favorite band, but a passion of mine, this music and this band and this community that revolves around it. Another special interest that I rediscovered was The Hunger Games, which I read when I was in middle school, so even young. And I wouldn't call it so much a passion of mine. I don't even think it ever was, even when I was in school. But it was a special interest, something I read all the books. I was somewhat invested in this trilogy, and I recently rewatched all the movies, which then got me back into the books, and now I'm reading the books that have come out since. There's something really special about going back to these books. Although I wouldn't describe them as a passion, it feels really comforting. It feels like rediscovering a part of myself that had grown up. It feels like reconnecting with my younger self. So that's the background. And so I did some digging on the internet about rediscovering old passions, and in an article by Vogue, the writer Didi Gluck, who used to be a competitive figure skater, rediscovers her passion at the age of 50. So it's something she did when she was young. She stopped for decades, and then she started doing it as a hobby in her middle age. And she talks about rediscovering this love for skating, and one quote that I really loved from it is when she says, "This isn't regression, it's reclamation." And she talks about how our early choices when we're young, they're not random and they're intuitive, and they say a lot about us, and they'll tell us a lot more about us than a Pinterest board ever will, because these interests and things we're drawn to really are intuitive. And so I've thought a lot about why I kind of lost interest in something I was so interested and in love with when I was younger. And I still don't have a complete answer, but I would say that it has something to do with just other interests taking over at that time. I think for me, the moment when I started to lose interest was at a time of change in my life, when I went from being a high school student to a college student and moving countries and starting a new life. And I think at that time, that old passion was so deeply associated with my old life. really associated with my high school years, my family life at the time, so intertwined. And so I think when I moved out of that, it was no longer, I think I wanted to separate myself from that past. I wanted to move on to new different things, and I didn't want the constant memory of those times. I wanted to explore new things, become a new person, evolve, and that was almost holding me back into that past. Now that I'm so much older, I think I have that distance between now and my high school years that it doesn't feel like it's tying me back to that time. I feel like it's so separated by time and by growth, and there's so much in between that listening to this music, especially because there's new music that's been put out since, so that music is more associated with who I am now. It's come out at this time, so it ties me to this point in time, whereas the older albums tie me to that point in time, because I can really look back at every single album and remember where I was in my life. And I know that in the future, when I think about the albums that have come out this year and last, that it's going to remind me of this current time in my life. So I think I moved on from this passion because I wanted new things. I took up new interests, and those, you only have a capacity for so many passions in your life. So I think those took over while my previous ones ended up taking a backseat. And I've almost felt guilty looking back. Now that I've rediscovered this passion, there's been times when I've felt guilty and sad for letting it go in between then and now. It almost feels like abandoning a friend who's always going to be there for you. So thinking that I kind of let this thing go for so long and ignored it, I feel almost sad and guilty. But now I realize that I obviously know I shouldn't feel that way, and that there's no need to feel that way. And I know that I had to step away in order for me to reclaim it with this much love and passion. I think if I had never stepped away, it wouldn't be reclamation, like she says in that quote. It would be more of like just staying the same. But by stepping away from something and coming back to it, it truly does feel like reclaiming my inner child and reclaiming my past, who I was and who I am now, and taking like active ownership over these things. So I try not to feel, it's just this weird kind of side effect is feeling guilty and sad, because I love this thing so much. I feel like I've missed out on it for all these years, but I know that it had to happen in order for me to enjoy it to the extent that I do today, and for it to be as special as it is to me now. I don't think it wouldn't feel as special if it had just been something I continued out of habit, but because it's something that I had let go of and consciously took back into my life, made room for in my life. When doing my reading, I came across this article by, I don't know who wrote it, but it's on Lucivara. And this one quote really stuck out to me, and I find it really beautiful. So in it they say, "Passions may go dormant, but they do not disappear. Like embers buried beneath ash, they wait for the conditions that allow them to reignite. Attention, time, and a gentle willingness to remember. When we revisit old passions with the benefit of maturity and new perspective, something powerful can emerge." And this quote really explained, I think, what I had been feeling, that this love and passion had always been there in the background because it was so important to me years ago, so it was never something I was going to forget. But it's like embers buried beneath ash. It was always there, kind of dormant, and again, it took attention, time, and a gentle willingness to remember. It took me wanting to go back and reflect on my old self and reflect on the past, and to decide to unbury these embers and to reignite this passion. And again, it's revisiting it with maturity and new perspective. The way I approach this passion now is going to be different from the way I approached it 10 years ago, because I have new maturity and I have new perspectives on it. And that almost makes it more powerful. It's not something I do out of routine. It's something, I'm bringing something new to it. It's not just something that's been continued for all these years. I'm bringing something new. And going back to why I think these passions changed from my teenage years to my adulthood is, I think when we're a teenager, we're really searching for our identity, a sense of who we are. I think when we develop passions as a teenager, we're finding them at a time where we're very uncertain about our identity and we're searching for who we are and who we will become. And I think when we come out of adolescence, we might turn our back on our interests for new ones, for more adult ones, for a new sense of identity as we're coming into adulthood. And that's, I think, what the case was for me. I had found new interests. I wanted to dissociate myself from my past, whereas now I am embracing my past and almost I'm giving love to my younger self. And there's nothing wrong with these new interests that we pick up as adults. Of course, they're all different. There's a quote about how we are like diamonds and different facets of us shine in different contexts, in different lights. And that's true. There's these old parts of me, there's these new parts of me, and they all shine at different times in my life, in different seasons of my life, and in different contexts. And after some years, we might rediscover an old passion and we don't cringe because, one, maybe we actually had really good taste when we were younger, and two, because it's filled with so many memories of who we were and of our childhood. You know, I think some people might look at people who still like what they like from high school as cringe and like they've never grown up. But I think stepping away from something for a little while and coming back to it, or liking something as an adult that you liked when you were younger, takes a lot of maturity and a lot of reflection. I think you ask yourself, why did I like this? Do I still like it? Is it actually good? Is it actually enjoyable? Why did I lose touch in the first place? Like I said, that's something that I've really been asking myself a lot, is why did I lose touch with this? And I think I have somewhat of an answer now. And I feel like my passion now is even stronger because it's something I willingly came back to. I had to reflect on it, and even after all that reflection, I decided it's something I still love and it's something I want to spend time on, and I made time in my existing routine in my adult life for this new old thing. And I think there's a lot of nostalgia associated with old interests. I think that's definitely how I feel more so about the Hunger Games. I mean, so much nostalgia for 21 Pilots. I think there's a lot of nostalgia associated with old interests and passions because they remind us of our younger selves and we're brought back to a time in our past, whatever it may be. And I think it's always tied to our identity somehow. Like, even years later, if you no longer engage in that thing, I think if it was an important part of your childhood or adolescence, you still remember that as a part of your identity. Like, I don't listen to, Panic at the Disco anymore, for example, but it was something I listened to a lot in high school, and I still accept that as, that's still part of my identity. It's something that was special to me then. This whole process of coming back to an old passion or interest has made me quite emotional, honestly, and I think returning to an old passion, it feels like coming home. It feels like returning to an old friend who's always going to be there for you and was just waiting for you to come back when the time was right. And don't force going back to old things. I think there's certain things that will stay in the past. I'm not going to rediscover all of my old passions and interests because there's so many throughout a lifetime. But I think the ones that are really meaningful to us, they'll come back when the time is right. If you're starting to feel curious about an old thing, then explore that curiosity and see where it leads. But I wouldn't force it either. Let these things come to you when you're ready for them, and wait for there to be a sense of curiosity and wanting to potentially re-explore this old thing. But sometimes it does take a little boost of, let me just check this thing out, because our lives are busy and we might not otherwise think of re-exploring old things. So coming back to my old passions has really felt like reconnecting with my younger self and reconnecting with my inner child, and it's felt tremendously healing, and it's made me so happy these past 2 years. It's almost stupid. It's really hard to describe how happy this has made me, but I think it's reintegrating old parts of myself that has helped me to feel more full again. Now I see the evolution of my identity is not something that's linear, going from who I was to who I am, but I see it more as a spiral now, where as I get older, I reintegrate old parts of myself and revisit old parts of my identity and reintegrate them into who I am now. I think I've said everything I had to say. I really hope that you can either find new passions and hobbies that excite you, or can rediscover an old one that will help you to reconnect with your inner child. And I had to talk about this because I feel like it's so important, and it's just made me so happy that I had to share it. If you enjoyed hearing me rant about this, and then please subscribe. I'm trying to bring videos weekly, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.